Hi, I'm Mike. I'm one of the two RS teachers at TRC. This video is just going to be a short introduction to A-Level Edexcel Religious Studies Unit 2 Ethics. So if you're considering taking RS at TRC in September, or if you're considering taking RS in general actually, this video will give you a quick rundown of some of the things that you'll be covering in the Ethics unit. If you're looking for reasons to actually study RS, or if you're looking for a breakdown of the way the course is examined, then you'll want to check out the video by Fran. I'll link it in the description below. She also covers the New Testament unit in that video as well, so that'll be the place to go and check out if you're interested in those things. If you're interested in Islam, which is the other topic, the third topic that we cover at TRC, then I'm going to record another video that runs through that unit and some of the things that we cover there. This video is literally just going to cover the ethics stuff. So ethics is one of 3 units that you'll cover in RS at TRC. You'll do 1 lesson a week on each of those 3 units, so an hour and a half a week will be on ethics, and you'll do 1 2-hour examination for each of those units as well at the end of the course, so one of those 2-hour examinations will be on ethics. All in all, makes up 33.3% of your course, so a third of your course. Each of the units is basically laid out exactly the same. You'll cover a different number of topics for each one, but broadly speaking it's about the same amount of content. You'll also do an anthology text for each one that covers a number of texts from different scholars, or in the case of New Testament studies, some biblical sections that cover some key pieces of information that you need to then be able to talk about, expand on and examine in your exam. So what exactly do we cover in the ethics unit? Well, the first topic that we cover is called Significant Concepts in Issues or Debates in Religion and Ethics. And this is very, very similar to some of the things that you may be doing at GCSE RE, where you'll have been looking at applied ethics topics and looked at things like the environment or equality or maybe war and peace or sexual ethics or crime or abortion or euthanasia and things like that. We're going to carry on in a similar vein here, looking at environmental issues and equality in a little bit more detail. We're going to talk about secular, so non-religious views on these areas. We're going to talk about religious views on these areas, and we're going to basically approach this in thinking about whether or not religion or non-religious views have the best approach to these topics, whether or not you need religion for these topics, and what exactly the best way to go about dealing with some of the issues in these areas are. We're going to look at some key scholars in both areas, people like Arne Ness in environmental issues, and indeed someone like Martin Luther King in equality. Look at the influence of their beliefs, whether faith has had anything to do with what they have to say, and ultimately what their point of view actually is and why. Once we've done that, we're going to go on to what's called ethical theory. So previously at GCSE RE, you'll have done something, as I've just said, called applied ethics, which is essentially looking at different specific situations and saying, well, what is the right thing to do in this circumstance? What's the best thing to do in this circumstance? In ethical theory, rather than looking at specific situations, we're actually going to ask the question, how do we work out what the best thing to do in any circumstance is? It doesn't matter about what the circumstance is. How do we figure out what's right or wrong, full stop? And we're going to look at 3 different approaches to that. The first, utilitarianism, says that the best thing to do in any circumstance is the one that brings about the most happiness. It's a secular point of view. It doesn't require religion to believe it. And essentially it stems from a guy called Jeremy Bentham and one of his proteges, John Stuart Mill, who both argued that to bring about the most happiness is morally good, and therefore the morally right thing to do in any circumstance is to bring about the most happiness. We're going to move on to situation ethics, which is from a guy called Fletcher, and it's a religious point of view that says that the best thing to do in any circumstance is doing the most loving thing. And with that, we'll cover an anthology text as well that covers a little bit about Fletcher's point of view, some of the good things about it, some of the problems with it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail so you're prepared for an exam where you'll need to be able to expand on that. We finally move on to natural moral law from Thomas Aquinas, who basically says that there are certain rules and laws that are built into us from God, and we need to be able to use those to figure out the right thing to do in any circumstance. So that is another religious point of view there. Once we've done the 3 ethical theories, we'll move on to application of ethical theories to issues of importance. So we're going to take those views that we've just looked at, we're going to take some of the religious views that we've just looked at, And we're going to put them to the test in different situations. Things like war and peace, where we'll talk about just war theory, which is a religious point of view, or was originally a religious point of view, that says that there are certain rules and laws that you must abide by in order to go to war and when you're at war. And we'll also talk about pacifism as well, and whether or not that works, whether or not that requires a religious viewpoint to truly be a pacifist, or whether or not you can be a pacifist and be secular as well, and some of the reasoning behind that. And we're also going to look at sexual ethics, so what religion and non-religious views have to say about things like sex before marriage, about homosexual relationships, and indeed about things like divorce as well. Again, we're going to put these different views to the test and say what some of the good things about them are, what some of the weaknesses about them are. But once we've done that, that's actually the end of the first year. There are 3 topics, and within those 7 subtopics that we'll cover in the first year. Might take us a little bit into summer as well, but once we've done that, that's year 1 done. At the start of year 2, we do a topic called ethical language. Now, ethical language is all about what we actually mean when we talk about right or wrong. So whereas ethical theory was how we work out what right or wrong actually is, and applied ethics is how we figure out what the right thing to do in a specific circumstance is, ethical language is, well, what do we actually mean by right or wrong to start with? What does it mean to say that this particular action is good or this particular action is bad? And how do we actually use those words in everyday life? The first question that we'll talk about, or the first subtopic, sorry, that we'll talk about within that area is meta-ethics, which asks that exact question. What does it mean to say that something is right or wrong? Is it something that's based on human viewpoint or human opinion or human belief, or does it come from somewhere else? Does it come from God? Does it come from the world around us? Is it something that's bred into us, evolutionary speaking, or is it just a fact of reality? And then we're also going to look at religion and morality as well. And religion and morality is all about whether morality requires God. Do we need God to be truly moral? Do we need God to enforce morality? Or is it in fact easier to be religious if we don't have God there getting involved in our faith, getting involved in our beliefs? Is it in fact possible to be moral if God is there threatening us with punishment if we somehow don't follow what he says? Once we've done that, we'll go back to ethical theory and we'll look at Kantian deontology, obviously by Kant, and virtue ethics from Aristotle, 2 secular ethical theories, one of which from Kant says that the right thing to do in any circumstance is to follow a particular set of rules or laws, namely his categorical imperative. And in the case of virtue ethics from Aristotle, the view that says that the right thing to do in any circumstance is the thing that basically makes us a better person. So virtue ethics isn't about necessarily figuring out what exactly the right thing to do is. It's about trying to be a better person. The idea being if you are a better person, if you become a good person, then you will just naturally do good things in any circumstance. There's 2 anthology texts there, one for Kant and one for Aristotle, that we'll look at in those areas. They are quite complicated, they're quite intricate because they're taken from both of those writers' texts, and we'll look at those in a little bit of detail and look at how we might go about analysing them, breaking them down, expanding on them in an exam. Once we finish that, we'll move finally on to medical ethics. Now, medical ethics only has one subtopic on the actual specification, but I've broken it down into 2 specific areas here because I think it requires a distinction between them both. The first is the beginning of life, including the status of the embryo. So this is where we're going to talk about things like abortion and whether or not it should be classed as murder or what in fact it should be classed as. We'll talk about all of those different ethical viewpoints that we've been discussing throughout, and we'll talk about some religious viewpoints as well, including when the embryo becomes a person or when it should be counted as a person, and whether or not that should affect the law surrounding abortion. In some cases, we might say that, well, okay, fine, it does count as a person, but still, should that affect the law around abortions? Should people still be able to get an abortion? Does this count as murder, even if we say the embryo is a person? And if we don't say the embryo is a person, what does that mean? We're also then going to look at the end of life, including euthanasia. So we're going to look at what happens at the end of our lives and whether or not we should have any rights, any control over when we die. And if so, what type of rights or control we might or should have. Should it be about whether or not we have a terminal illness, whether or not we're suffering, or should people just be allowed to end their lives whenever they wish? Again, we're going to look at some of the secular views surrounding those things and some of the religious views that we've been talking about throughout. Some of you may have covered some of this stuff at GCSE RE. We're going to look at it in a little bit more detail here. That unit itself, the medical ethics unit, also includes an anthology text, so we'll be going through that in a little bit of detail and looking at how we might expand on it in an exam. In terms of the content, though, that's it. 6 topics across the 2 years, broken up into 13 subtopics, or 12 subtopics if you take medical ethics as one, as it says on the actual specification, that we are going to do roughly in order, but we will do a little bit of hopping between them when we need to talk about previous theories or things like that. We're obviously also going to be doing revision throughout just to keep some of these ideas fresh in your memory. But what I'm hoping is basically by talking about these secular views and by talking about these religious views constantly, they'll get hammered into your head, and when it comes to the exam, you'll be able to reel off a bunch of them really easily. So just as a reminder then, if you're looking for the reasons as to why you might want to study RS, some of the reasons why you might want to take this course, or the way the course is actually examined, including a breakdown of the question types that you might see in the exam, then you want to go and check out Fran's video. And as I said before, I'll link it in the description below. If you're looking for Islam or New Testament, then the links below will help you out as well. Fran has done the video on New Testament. It's in that video that I've just mentioned about reasons to study RS and the examination itself. And I'm going to record a video on Islam shortly that I'll also be uploading to this channel, but I'll also drop a link in below if you're interested in that. As I said before, those are the 3 units that we cover at TRC: Islam, Ethics, and New Testament Studies. Those are the 3 exams that you'll be doing. So if you check out those videos, it should give you a rough idea of the kind of things you need to be thinking about come September. Other than that, that's all I've really got to say. I hope you share this video. If you know anybody that's interested or might be interested in looking at RS, then this might be a video you can point them to. Please like, follow, comment. I'm going to be dropping some more information, some more videos covering some of the content in RS and philosophy over the next coming weeks and over the summer. And if you get a chance, if you're interested in humanities in general, please check out Alan, History Nerd, on YouTube. He's one of the teachers here at TRC, and he covers history and politics on his channel as well. And if you're interested in either of those topics, even if you're not looking at studying in September, then there's some cool stuff on his channel as well that you could probably check out. Thanks for listening. Please turn the bell on so you can get notified if I update or upload any more videos. But otherwise, see you soon. Bye.